guys are interested in pursuing? Does anybody want to start? Yeah. I'm interested in pursuing special education. Okay. Want to go around? You guys raise your hands. What do you guys do?
Student affairs.
Woo. Branding.
What was it?
Branding.
Oh, that's really cool.
Did you have branding?
Education.
No, it's different.
What?
I missed that one.
Elementary.
Education, got it.
Anyone else want to share? Yeah.
Student affairs.
Woo!
Studying student
Woo.
affairs.
Yay.
All right. Well, there's a good number of you. If you didn't share, we'll talk later. So basically, what we're going to talk about today are considerations for graduate school, selecting an institution, so what school's right for you, taking a required exam, that program requires one, the application process, interviews and open houses, and how are you going to pay for all of them. So first off, considerations for grad schools. So figuring out what career you would like to pursue, and does that career work for advancing your degree, and does that career require you go to grad school? So thinking about how are you going to handle another 2 to 6 years of school? Is that something that you can do after you've done all these years? I mean, high school, college, and can you do another 2 to 6 years? Or do you want to take a break and maybe consider working and then pursuing it? And do you really know if this is the right fit for you? Because grad school is a lot more focused than undergrad, and so it's something that it's going to take time out of your life, and you want to make sure you're pursuing something that you're really interested in.
Going back to the original question of asking what you're necessarily interested in, where your passions lie. Personally, coming out of undergrad, I was actually still at the fork of two roads and trying to decide. So you don't necessarily have to be so niche. You can apply to 2 programs, but I'm telling you from personal experience, it makes it harder because you're making different statements of personal statements. So it's just adding to your workload. But going back to this question, depending upon what you did study in your undergrad, in some ways it is in your best interest not to go directly to grad school, depending upon the field that you're in. Even when you do go into grad school, there's even after your master's in my field, I'm political science. So when you're looking at I want to go for my PhD, and after looking at the path and looking at the consideration of work experience, it's in my best interest to actually stop my education and really decide what niche path I want to go to, and in many cases I actually get more money if I just put in the work experience versus getting a PhD. So these variations occur across all fields. So you need to do your research on it.
And on top of that, is it something that you can afford at this time? Are you willing to do full-time, or do you want to work and do part-time, or will the company that you're working for pay for it? Because a lot of companies do that. And so it's trying to figure out what's the best fit for you. Is grad school, this is the right time to pursue grad school, and what's that going to look like in your life? So selecting an institution, so looking at what kind of schools you want to go into, kind of the name of the school, where it's located. Are you interested in going to a different part of the country or the world? Is it research and labs? How are the faculty? What are the class sizes? Kind of understanding the program, kind of like what you did for undergrad, but more focused on what it is that you're going to be doing in that program. Because similar programs, yeah, they might give you the same degree, but they can focus on different things. And so understanding what it is that they're focused on and how that fits into what you want to pursue as a career. And then realistically, will you be accepted? Understanding how well you did in undergrad and what are the things that you experienced in your undergrad. Will that fit with that grad school's requirements, and do you see yourself going there? And U.S. News and World Report kind of ranks schools, so you can kind of look into that and see different grad schools, what are the requirements, what are the best ones for your program, and go from there. And then also on top of that, do they require the GRE, and what kind of GPA are they looking for? And can you get in with the scores that you got with that?
I'd add accreditation too, depending on what you want to do. There's a lot of programs out there that are just breaking ground, so they may be brand new and they have like two faculty or they have adjunct faculty or they're not accredited. Those are some fun details that usually aren't broadcasted on the pages that you're looking at. So just be really diligent in looking at FAQs and reaching out to students at those schools, or, word of mouth from faculty here can work wonders in terms of finding out what schools they would recommend, or do they know anybody pursuing it you want to pursue. Sometimes their insight is invaluable in terms of like these little things you might not pick up on.
Yeah, absolutely. In regards to the networking aspect, especially with statements of purpose, even reaching out to those institutions and looking at their faculty and seeing, oh, I actually really like that area of study that that professor does, and having an outreach with that professor, because in many cases, professors even here, they'll be honest with you and be like, this institution may not be the best for you given what you're describing that you want in your career path. So it is important that you do have those conversations, even in the beginning parts. Save yourself $80, $100 on an application.
Because at least in my experience, I had not put UR on my radar, but someone in my undergrad did her same program here, and so because of that, I was able to find a program that really fit me. And so talking to people that you already know and who are kind of pursuing similar fields, or you're pursuing similar fields as them, they have a lot of insight, so it doesn't hurt to talk to them.
For the tests that are required, there's variations on different tests depending upon your area of study. There is the GRE test, which is widely used for many schools. I know that education, you can use the GRE, it depends on the program. There's the GMAT, which is business for the most part. I have heard of some math programs actually using that as well. Law school is the LSAT. The time management for the preparation for all of these, even the MCAT. I know the MCAT, most of my friends that have gone through that process, they dedicated a whole year off because it already takes a full year for the application to go into med school. So I don't know if that's something that you want to do, but it's also the same time for the LSAT. They give themselves a full year. Jury, kind of squeezed in there, worked my way in and out of it. It's an awful process, I'm not going to lie, but I also really don't like tests, so that's probably why I really didn't like it. But once again, all of these take formalities and time for registration and everything like that as far as preparation. So you, in addition to like looking at these applications and everything else, so you also have to have this in a nice segment of your brain, remembering that you have to order your studying and everything like that.
And I think our next one,
Yeah, it's a combination.
GR test details. So for most of you, anybody CSP is usually GRE. GREs, I would say, like the standard, and then there's those specializations which may require both the GRE plus those, and some don't require anything. So it's hard to say. I think more
Because there's subject too.
Right. There's also
Jury subjects.
there's the broad GRE, but then within the GRE, there's areas of specialization that you can kind of take in addition to, or as a whole, or whatever. So again, when you're looking at your schools, it's usually under their FAQ or under their admission bullet points whether or not they require it. If they do require it, what scores they're looking for. For CSP, for some cases, they just want to know that you've taken it, and they don't even provide a score. They just check off, okay, take the GRE, and then look at the score. So, and at URI, they don't require it here at all. It's optional. So
They did for mine.
So it's based on programs. So some programs require that you take a test, and some don't. And that's personal preference for the school.
In many programs, I was actually spoke because the director of my program is the chair of the MBA program. He was telling me it's actually a filter. So they have the component of your personal statement, your resume that's like telling all the work that you did, and then your e-score and your like pile 3, and they're like, okay, those, and they do, and that's how they kind of thin out the hundreds of applications. So it is something to consider. Okay, maybe my jury score isn't that great, but I do have 2 of the other 3, so you have to also rationalize that in your mind as well. Are you shorting yourself by taking that time once again to apply to school that you may not be the best fit for?
And in terms of the GRE test details, it does book fast. So normally you'll go to gre.org. It's free to create using your password, and then that gets you to the part where you can see the testing centers in the area. And I want to say it's like 130, 150, depending on where it's
Different for me.
Okay, depending on your combinations.
Yeah.
But it's expensive. It's more than SAT, I think, from what I remember.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's, in terms of what the actual test looks like, is similar to the SAT. There's math, reading, writing, and there's books out there if you're going to study. I should have dedicated more time to studying, but I think you can manage it in like 2
You
to 4
can.
months.
I would dedicate a season,
Yeah.
like
To
the
get
off
best score,
season, like
obviously.
Christmas break or summertime. It's probably a season, just because it's too much to comprehend, like all that vocab and maybe new concepts of math. If you know you haven't had algebra since high high school?
It's knowing your style of studying and being aware of that and creating a timeline around it and being, okay, if I need more time to study, then I'm going to start studying this time and my test is in 6 months and breaking it down like that. So just understanding your style of studying and doing it from there.
And you can retake it. There's rules in terms of how you can't back them, but I think it's a 21-day frame or something where if you have the money, you can retake it to try to improve your scores like the SAT. So.
I don't know if any of you have accommodations as in for learning disabilities or have you accommodations generally in the school. But if you do have a process for applying, it's a little bit different. And I'm saying this because I tell you, I was not expecting this when I did it. So I do have accommodations. And going through the process to getting test accommodations with the GRE does add on time. So managing your timeline is important for this. If you do have accommodations, you have to go through the process of having your doctor write the note that they did the analysis. That's pretty much how you get accommodations here anyways. But you take that paperwork and you add it into another packet that's on the actual website with Kaplan, and you do the paperwork and you have to file it through. It takes a month for it to process, so you want to give yourself an additional 2 months because it does tend to happen that they reject it the first time around. And then you'll get accepted, and you actually, the reason why this is also important is you pay differently. So generally, if you don't need accommodations, you don't need to pay. Well, you pay right then and there on the computer as you're scheduling, like it's all one shot, like on the computer. If you're getting accommodations, that's not the case. You actually file in your paperwork, and then when you call, once they say, oh, you've been accepted, like we accepted your accommodations, you call them to make your appointments to set up your test date and time. And that's when you give them your code, because when you're filing your disability paperwork, you're sending in a piece of paper that also has the payment for the test. So that's a different process, because if you do pay regular way, it actually screws up their paperwork process. If you have any niche questions about the process, I'm always available to help you through that process.
I would start with Girmaiy.org. There's a lot of great information on there in terms of all these things and how you can proceed and study the tests and so on. Practice tests and everything. Yeah.
For those of you who have taken it, what do you think is the best assessment for wanting to study for the GRE? Like practice tests. Do you consider buying a book?
I borrowed one from a friend. They're expensive. I did like the practice test. I think it all depends on what area. Like I know that I needed to review the math, the same thing. I had to take algebra. It's a lot of like geography and formulas, triangles, angles.
It's really algebra all over again. That was my freshman year of high school.
Yeah, and I
like, yeah, 6 years. Don't run that
Geography. Let me clarify. That has been a long day. Sorry. Geography. Like that's not theory. Don't start. Geometry. Sorry, Dan. That's my pleasure.
I'm not okay.
So yes, obviously I need to study that. But I did fine on it. So I did take practice tests. That was most helpful to me. I don't know.
When I first went into it, I bought a book just simply at Barnes & Noble's. It was like the general GRE book, whatever else. It was $20. So I was like, all right, I can deal with the $20. I'm cheap, not gonna lie. So I went and I got that book. It was helpful enough because it did, review some of the concepts like the math and what have you. But I actually used YouTube a lot for the math and like tutorials, because I would just look at the concepts and be like, well, I'm not gonna be able to teach myself that. So I would just go and like type in the concept, and because I'm a visual learner and applying it. So I use YouTube a lot. Second time around, so you asked about the pre-test. I should answer to that first. I actually utilized the free GRE test that they hold on campus. So I did that. That was interesting because it's like the full duration of time. So it's really a true practice test. It's not fudging on time or anything. It's like you're really sitting in there for the exam. And then second time around, I just bought the new Kaplan book, and honestly, it's worth the investment. It was $45 or $50. However, you have, not only do they give you a CD for like the tutorial, and it's through Kaplan. That's like the true book. Kaplan makes the test. They tell you, they do a whole audio like pathway, like, yeah, like, oh, like you should do this, and telling you how to manage the whole process, which is nice, you know, nice to have their insight on it. And they also have tons of practice tests, and you log into an account online as well, and they give you additional tests. So like there's mad tests with the Kaplan book, paper and electronic. Plus you get to do a pre-test entering into the system as well.
I was aware of my testing abilities, but I did not, I applied to all programs that didn't require it. So that was my preference.
I know. It really is brutal. But we feel accomplished when you're done, and you're like, okay.
Or you're like, I did it. And it lasts 10 years, so once you have it, you're like, not that bad. I guess I can keep that for 10 years. Maybe I'll use it. Maybe I won't. It's good to have. Do you have any questions?
So do all of the tests scores last about 10 years, or do they vary?
I don't know the fine tuning on the other ones because I've only lived in the theory world.
I believe they are different. And some schools all probably have their own policies in terms of like, what day you took it versus what day you're applying, which is unfortunately that six. But I would say at least 1 to 2. That's generally what I know.
If it was less than a year, that'd be a joke. As far as like real life after
Because you're paying
undergrad, because you're going to work, family, like anything less than a year, that'd be silly. But I would look into it because it does vary.
The website's probably list it, and then I will look into the schools. If you can't find it, just call.
But then the programs that a list like, oh, Jerry, that's from the last 4 years or something like that.
That's what we're talking
That's
about.
what I saw.
Right, right.
Sometimes they sometimes it doesn't right on their website, so you just kind of have to do your due diligence and check that stuff out to see if it's worth it. Okay, so now it's speak, right? Okay, so to look at the big picture, broad, kind of everything you have to get done in order to actually apply, this is what we're looking at. So you may or may not decide to take the GRE or another test, fill in the blank, GMAT, LSAT, Praxis for your education people potentially, and you know, it varies state to state and whatnot. But after you made that decision and you book your test, you take your test or not, obviously you're picking a good chunk of schools, I would say. Obviously the applications cost money, so this is where you're going to have to really take some time to make sure you're applying to the school that if you got in, you actually consider attending, because the application fees can be up there, and for the most part, depending on your field, I know like PT and engineering may be different, but there isn't typically a common app for grad school, so there's a lot of time and effort and energy that goes into each of these to make your personal statement tailored to the school, and there may be an accompanying interview day, and so 6 to 8 might be kind of high. It all depends on what you're going into. How many did you had tons, right?
I did
No?
like 5.
You did 5, I did 6.
I did 4. I did 2 for each area of study.
Okay. So it varies.
I would say go on the higher end because, I don't know, once again, I didn't do my due diligence, I guess, because I didn't know that I was applying to top schools, and people were like, you're applying to top schools, you realize that, so I kind of suicided myself in that regard. So you want to know your schools that you're applying to. Are you applying to the top schools? I didn't even know it. So if you are going to go for those dream schools, intentionally or unintentionally, just realize that you maybe want some buffer school.
Yeah, there's like a formula too that I've heard people say sometimes where you're supposed to apply like, 3 was that are in your range, safety, reach. That's more like an undergrad thing. But the same thing kind of applies in grad school. A lot of them are very transparent in terms of their selectivity and the number of applications they get here, especially in CSP. That's normally something you can find. NASPA and ACP, if you're familiar with those websites, have directories, a lot of information on it. So, you'll normally be able to find that. So make sure you're spreading it out if you are applying to these schools, you have the best chance of getting in somewhere. And then in addition, you'll probably, for the most part, for every school, need to submit some sort of reference, letter of recommendation, personal statement, or statement of purpose, sometimes one or the other, and then your transcript. So the hardest part, I think, and I don't, I'll let you guys see before, but are the letters of rec and personal statement, just because they take time to write. Each school has different word lengths, or sometimes they ask a question that's very specific. Sometimes they're like very broad, and you just kind of have to wing it and do your best. So I think that is what takes a lot of time to really prepare and get reviewed and to get it perfect the way you like it. So we did find a good video, but what do you think?
I definitely agree. Those are are probably my most difficult, even given that like we're connected with so many people in this job, so it makes it easy if you're going to student fairs. How many bosses have you had? You know what I mean? Like once you get to that point, it's the task itself isn't difficult, but the timing, like everything is factored around timing. That's really what makes it most difficult. As far as personal statement and everything else, I'm first generation, so this whole process was like really I really didn't know what was going on. So kind of just jumped in, but in my own failures in this process, I would definitely advise that you use the resource center here for professional development, because they will read through everything and like just even edit the simplest things like your resume, things of that nature. And some of them, if you're not close with the chair of an MA, if your program say doesn't have an MA program here, you can't talk to someone on what they're looking for in that statement, they could be a potential resource.
And I think with going back to letters of recommendation, that's a big thing because you want to give the people that you're asking time to write it out, time to submit it, and so they get it in before the deadline. And then also being sure afterwards that you thank them in some way. So thank you card is always a really good way to go.
Yeah, going back to the letters of recommendation, two things that I would suggest. Once you've found the people that you need, that you follow up with them so that way you know that they were able to submit it prior to the deadline, not just for the thank you note, but to also find out this person was able to fill it out for me. Now I gotta find someone emergency-wise. So that's number one. Number two, to thoroughly read the people that you need for your recommendations, because certain programs ask for a specific person. So maybe, I don't know, I've never seen some as detailed as what I'm about to say, but maybe the dean of your university or something, you know, but they'll ask for a specific person that they want to hear from. So just make sure that you go ahead and respect that, because that could also be something that deters you from continuing on with a specific program that you're interested in if you didn't get the specific program that they asked for.
I've seen faculty, I've seen a supervisor,
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So just make sure
personal,
you respect
like a
that.
friend or.
Yeah. They're very specific on who they want. And then on top of that too, all the ones I applied to at least, whenever the people that I had submitted recommendations for me submitted it, I got a notification email saying that, hey, they sent it in for you. So that's how I knew that I could send my thank you card or that I needed to get on top of that because I didn't get anything, but yeah.
And again, it's school specific. Some can submit it online, some you have to mail them. Those are kind of scary because that takes a long time and you're kind of waiting, you know. So sooner is better.
You can put trackers on those though.
That is true. Definitely make sure you know.
UPS tracking, it's
Yeah.
worth the $6.
Overnight it, all that stuff. Yeah. 'Cause that would be your biggest pet peeve because it's something out of your control. So it's like, oh,
And you're stressing about it.
Get it? Yeah. So these, we actually kind of quickly, we don't have anything else to see with those, but yeah, go ahead. We found this nice video that we think summed up personal statements and letters of recommendation really well. Hopefully you can hear it.
The personal statement is really a great vehicle for students to be able to tell their story to the admissions committee and should be seen as a way for them to be able to stand out through the rest of the application path.
I would definitely make sure it's not cliche. A lot of personal statements are almost like a biography, talking about you were born here and where you went to school. We can see that on the resume. So I would definitely recommend, whether it's coming across as a story for your personal statement, talking about a specific situation that made you push yourself into this new industry.
In fact, sometimes when I read applications, I look forward to those personal statements because there are some great stories about what experiences led them to where they are now. You don't get that every day, and it gives us a really good insight as to who you are as a person and potentially what you hope to do with your life.
It's very important for applicants to tailor their personal statements to the school because it's a way for the admissions officers to make sure that they're admitting the right person.
And what we're looking for is that you've done your research, that you know what our school is about, and that the school is a school and a program that can help you achieve your goals, and not just because it's a recognizable name.
Tell them exactly what is it about this specific school that really interests you. Is it their particular concentration areas? Is it the specific faculty? Or is it particular research centers that they have in-house? These are the type of specific answers that admissions committees are hoping to get from a student's personal statement.
It takes a lot of time, a lot of thought.
to make it very specific to the program. I have a colleague that had done graduate admissions advising with students, and as a minimum, she suggests that people spend at least 3 months writing their personal statements.
Recommendations are a very important part of the application process because it's a way for people that know you and that you have a relationship with to be on your side and be another advocate for you to get into the program. So you want to make sure that these people like you. You want to make sure that you're not just getting a recommendation because they're the dean of your school or the president of your school or a higher up in a certain industry or organization. You want to make sure that you really have a relationship with them. And it doesn't matter how, let's say, low level within the industry they are or organization, as long as you feel that they will put a strong recommendation forward. One of the best recommendations that we received at the school was from a Dunkin' Donuts supervisor. And that may sound crazy to some people. We aren't at Dunkin' Donuts University or anything, but it was a great way to showcase characteristics that we wouldn't normally be able to see in a recommendation. They were able to talk about their work ethic and how they were great with people and communicated during conflicts. There's Monday morning in New York and you're trying to get your coffee and could be a little crazy. So they were able to do conflict resolution.
While most schools do not require recommendation letters from academic references, the admissions committee always appreciates hearing from a colleague in the field, because academic references are able to speak to your academic abilities and classroom performance in a way that perhaps an internship or work supervisor might not.
And you as an applicant have the ability to sit down or contact your recommenders again and bring them up to speed on what you've been doing with your life since you were last in touch with them, and share your reasons for wanting to do this and your particular strengths and weaknesses. And if they're listening properly and do you think that it's a good fit, then you are going to have a very strong letter of recommendation as a result of that.
It's very important to give your recommenders, I would say ideally, at least a 1-month turnaround from the time that you request the letters from them to the time that they deliver them to you. The reason being that A, your recommenders are likely very busy people. Second of all, writing these letters takes a lot more time, particularly if they are sincere and well thought out. And I think that at the end of the day, you are asking your recommenders a favor. You're asking them to help you. And certainly in any kind of context where you're seeking somebody's help, you never want to rush them.
All right. We were also Googling when she said, write your personal statement. Starting 3 months. What do I know? That's a little long. Especially for those late to the game, which I was. I don't know. And 1 month for a recommender, I would say is accurate. You definitely want to give them as much time as possible so they can write something thoughtful about you. You gotta nag them sometimes, even if it's somebody you know really well, depending on their schedule. But for a personal statement of purpose, I'd say, the longer the better, just because you can review it over and over. But
You can ask others to read it over for you, because it's always good to have another set of eyes on something.
but I'd say a few weeks.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks is fine, not even.
Most of them are short, depending on where you're applying. Some require many pages, but most of these,
Most programs,
1 page.
Yeah.
Ours
Very
are like 1 page, single space,
because
done.
they're reading so many, I don't think they want more going.
They want it to be concise.
this,
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, for the programs that you applied to where you were free to write about whatever you wanted to write about, what did you have? You girls, I'm sorry.
it's okay. I said that, I was like, oh, we should write our personal statement. We couldn't even know, I don't even know.
Oh, I don't know.
I think I'm going to.
I'm trying to think. Mine were kind of tailored at why I wanted to pursue this field and what made me passionate about it and why was I interested in it and what were my goals afterward and what did I see ideally me doing after I graduated. And then also focusing on why I chose this school.
Which is a lot to fit in 1 page.
Yeah, it was hard.
Which requires lots and lots of,
Wait, personal statement's 1 page?
most of the time.
Most of them are.
Double page or single?
Single.
Single usually. Still, that's like 3 hours.
It was hard.
It's very hard,
Yes,
because
I edited a lot.
yes, you will edit that 1 page
the general statement, overall, you're going to be making little tweaks for each school because, okay, I'm not gonna say that area, I'm gonna say that area, like the little things, and that does take time because you have to move around different sentences in the concept.
Yeah.
It's like,
Oh, I remember.
it's the littlest thing, but it just takes so much time. It's
I
so
I
nitpicky.
had one closing sentence that I was like highlighting why the school was so great, and I literally just changed the school every time I did personal statement. I was like, it's so good, it works. But I guess I gotta figure out the
I would say mine was something similar. Most people, I mean, CSP is kind of a field where we prize people on how they got there, just because, you know, any undergrad can be in a CSP school, so I think that's something that tends to be a theme for the statements. But for other fields and other areas, it may be something totally different.
I thought that it was interesting that they did know, like, oh, they want kind of like your story, which is something that you kind of did in your undergrad. I took that approach, and then later on, after I had gotten declined from 2 schools, I was like, hey, what's going on? Because I know that I have everything else, and I was actually told by my advisor that for my area of study, which is political science, it may be similar for business as well, that you're selling yourself. You are not telling your story. Like, yes, you can describe your characteristics and your character or whatever.
Yeah.
However, you want to sell yourself. You want to tell them why they should have you over someone else and what you are going to offer. So that was my last personal statement I got at school. So it really does matter. So I would look into that. You can talk to maybe someone that you can network through Facebook and be like, all right, I want to go to URI. Okay, so you like try to find someone that's connected through URI and send an email or something. It's casual as far as networking for school, because once you're here, networking is for the most part, people are very open to helping you.
Especially if it's their alma mater. They love talking about it. Jacob.
Do you guys mind if I add something about
No,
personal
go.
statements that I experienced? Okay, so I am also CSP. I applied to, I think, 13 student affairs programs across the country. So these personal statements vary as widely as the number of institutions that you're applying to. Some questions that I received were like, name an important moment that changed your life, or so you'd be surprised by just, I think one was like, name 3 objects that have a significant meaning for you. And so it's like, they can be really weird and you might not understand why they connect, but do your best. As for lengths, I have seen them go as long as 3 pages. They ask for 3 pages worth of personal statement. And then also for like how long it takes, check with a lot of different people to see what they think about your personal statement, because the higher up you go, they'll have more opinions, and that's probably better. So like I checked it with 3 different directors of residence life when I was going for residence life stuff. So do that, because they're gonna have a lot of opinions on what they want to see in a graduate student, but also know that you can disagree with what they say. So like if they say one thing, you don't just have to change your personal statement, something like that. You can disagree with them. So, yeah.
I definitely had that experience where I did go to the career center and I was showing it to multiple student nurse professionals, and they had very different opinions. Some was like, oh, I like it, and then another one, if I had a final product, and then somebody I really admired was like, like I think you could do better, and I was like, no. You know, you spend so long on one page over and over, how many times can you read it? So keep that in mind too. At the end of the day, you have to be happy with it, and everyone will have different opinions. So just do your best. Any other questions about personal statements, references, before we jump to the next? No?
So someone asks you questions for a personal statement? All of them ask questions?
No, not all of them. I'm trying to think. Right off the bat, I know I played Rutgers, and Rutgers did. They were very interested in knowing how the specifics of their program matched with what you wanted to do. So some are very...
Some are very specific and some are very broad.
yeah.
So just knowing ahead of time what effort you need to put into it.
The questions are usually on, if they do have questions, they usually go to you on the application notes. So they put the link and it'll bring you right to it. So you'll know.
Right away, yeah.
Okay, so taking your GRE, you got your letters of rec, your personal statement's done, potentially you applied and maybe gotten in, or maybe there's an open house, an accepted students day, in some cases an interview day for an assistantship, or some other part-time job, or what have you. So these are just some tips, things that we are thinking about to help you in that process. And that is to obviously dress professionally. If you are visiting the campus, even if it's just a campus visit, maybe you have no interview or you know, have something particular planned, but you're just going to check it out. Dress professionally. funny because you never know who you might bump into, you know, whose hand you might shake. You know, you can always try when you're there to meet the director of the program you're applying to, or even their front desk staff. And usually, those people, if that person isn't available, will say something about, oh, so-and-so stopped by, or look for this name on this application. So if you are going to check it out, be social. Especially if you're making a trip, potentially somewhere far, try to get the most out of your visit. So do try to schedule those appointments in advance. Some programs usually are smaller. They'll be more apt to meet with students, but that's something I was able to do, especially in CSP, at UConn, and a few other places. So they're very open to that. But again, know the program. So if you, depending on what your ultimate goals are, will dictate what schools you'd like to apply to, again, especially in CSP. Some are very administratively heavy, some are have a very strong counseling undertone. Here, I'd say we're a good mix of, you know, administration, student development. That's true, we have student development lens. So these are things that before applying to school, I had no clue. I was like, student affairs, yeah, that's what I want to do. And then
I remember in one of my interviews, they asked, like, what specifically about our program is it that interests you? And so if I had to research beforehand what it was that interested me in that program, I would have blinked. And so it's important to read up and, like, on their website, it's like, what is it our focus is, and this is what we want to pursue with our students. And so knowing that ahead of time definitely helps, and kind of shows that you know about their school. Yeah.
And that's what's on here, some typical interview questions. You can pretty much expect all of these, so I would recommend, you know, coming up with a quick 30-second, you know, pitch for all of these things, or really sitting down and thinking about what am I trying to get